I don't really do speeches, and that's the end of the... I guess you have heard some already. So I will take advantage of that which has all been done by all the presenters, and I just take questions. Is there any left? I hope there are. Oh, there is one. Thank you, sir.
He's another French guy.
But he's not a plant of yours, no? Good.
Hello, Francis. So my question is about the structure in awareness. Like from the perspective of awareness, we are bombarded by this sensation, like pain comes up, visual images comes up, but there is some structure. It's not random. Where does the structure, which is the structure we experience in the world, but from the perspective of consciousness, it's just like, it's not like things arise in consciousness, not in a random fashion. There seems to be some order and structure. Where does this come from?
There is a structure appearing in awareness. It is not a structure of awareness. For in order to have a structure, you need to have form. And awareness is the formless presence in which all forms appear. So it is in and by itself devoid of any structure. The structures appear within awareness, and in a sense, once we go beyond the mere fact of appearance, but once we become convinced that awareness, beyond being that in which or to which the structures appear, is also a reality. In other words, that there is awarenessing or awareing in this moment is real, is for real. It is not a figment of our imagination. And that, in fact, the only thing we can be absolutely certain of is that awareness is awareing. Because the content of awareness may, after all, be a dream. So the first step is to realize the reality of awareness beyond the shadow of a doubt, because we live in a culture in which the reality is attributed to the content of awareness and not to awareness. Once we realize that awareness is for real, that awareness is real, then the second question that comes up is, how many realities are there? You know? Or, to put it more bluntly, is there more than one reality? If yes, that creates kind of a problem, because, first of all, how do we know that there are two realities, for instance, if not from the vantage point of a third reality that encompasses both? If there are two realities, how do they interact with one another without being embedded, so to speak, in an ultimate reality? That would be the only ultimate reality of both, you see? So the recognition of the reality of consciousness has far-reaching consequences. Ultimately, that which gets revealed through this investigation is that the reality that perceives in this moment, that which is hearing these words, is also the reality of the universe. To put it in different words, it is the universe which is hearing and which is speaking. So these consequences are far-reaching because we believe usually in this culture that that which is hearing, that which is perceiving, that which is seeing, that which is thinking is a limited and separated entity. And that as a result of that, there is anxiety. This entity has a short lifespan, and it is already too late for this entity to experience all there is to be experienced in this beautiful universe. And that creates nostalgia and suffering. When we realize that that which perceives is the universe itself, in this timelessness there is plenty of time. We relax. And there is plenty of time to enjoy ourselves, really. So that's my answer. I went on a tangent. It was nice. Thank you for the question.
Hi, Francis. We touched on the issue of time in the workshop this morning, the illusion of time, and I wonder if we could hear more about the illusion of space. I seem to understand the illusion of time better than the illusion of space.
Well, we have to agree or to define what we mean by illusion. And I would define illusion as something that doesn't exist by itself, something the existence of which is dependent upon something else. There is no time, really, no perception of time or of space, for that matter, without events or objects. So our experience of time and space is dependent upon the existence of objects. So our experience of time and space doesn't exist independently in the absence of objects. But that's something that I leave you as a hypothesis pending verification. There is only consciousness or awareness. So that the ultimate reality of space and time is awareness, just as awareness is also the ultimate reality of that which is perceived. The ultimate reality that perceives and of that which perceives. And the ultimate reality of that which is perceived are the same. That's a fundamental equation, if you will, of Advaita is Atman equals Brahman. Consciousness equals the reality. Take it just as a hypothesis, pending verification, and the more we try to verify or falsify that which I've just said, the happier we get. And that's the only thing that matters. That's the goal. Goal is happiness. And happiness is simply consciousness enjoying itself, either directly or through its instrument of celebration it creates, such as this universe, such as other people, such as works of art, such as the phenomena of nature. through love, through beauty, through understanding, through sharing, through discovering, through laughing. Yes? Take the mic because...
You say the meaning of life is happiness. How to sustain happiness with so much trauma going on in the world, devastation, rape, all that stuff? What's your suggestion on that?
A good friend is dying at the hospital. And you come to visit him or her, and there is a sweet sadness, and there is love, and there is happiness in love. It's just that we fail to see it if we believe that we as love, we as presence are dying. Then there is misery. But when there is this recognition and this experience of love and this deathlessness of it, I'm not saying you are dancing with your friends. There is a form of sweet sadness, just as in music you have the fast movements, but you have also these beautiful slow movements, these adagios and largos. So love and beauty, they come to us in various flavors at different times. We have to understand death and birth and change as the necessary ingredients of evolution, which is, in fact, simply a celebratory process. But if we believe that this world is all there is to reality, it's a different story. Then there is hopelessness. That's why I said that what liberation, realization is really at its core, it's a liberation from misery, which is happiness. That's what it's about. Don't think that the Buddha was teaching anything else than liberation from suffering, which is happiness. Or Ramana Maharshi, or Jean Klein, or Ananda Mai, or Socrates, or Parmenides, or Meister Eckhart, or Rumi. When you hear Rumi's poems, there is this vibrancy of love, this enthusiasm for life, this eagerness, and at the same time, this freedom, this detachment,
I don't think I have an issue with death. It's more like women in Somalia getting raped for breakfast, lunch, and dinner as an ongoing.
But it's not different. I mean, we agree, there is death, there is stupidity, there is ignorance. The source of all of that, which you are describing, can always be traced back to one single strange phenomenon, which is the belief to be a separate entity, which is tantamount to the lack of love. So what are we going to do about it? Of course, if someone is starving or thirsty, you feed them, you heal them, you give them water. But beyond that, that is not going to solve really their problem. For there are people who are wealthy, healthy, young, handsome, and commit suicide. So the real beyond that, the real healing beyond that, is to go beyond the hopelessness that goes with being a separate entity, a limited consciousness, born only to die, to disappear.
So you're saying as long as I'm happy personally, then that's hopefully if we all get to that state of just being happy, the world
There is
will
no
get there?
personal happiness. Happiness which is not shared is not happiness. It is inherent to happiness to share itself. It is inherent if you are in a situation where you're another human being or a living and sentient being is suffering in any fashion or form, a crying baby, kind of, to do whatever it takes. You cannot be happy while the baby is crying, you know that, right? You have to do something. So there is no such a thing as an isolated happiness or a personal happiness anymore, that there is such a thing as an isolated individual or consciousness. Now, when we let go of the belief that we are a separate consciousness, then our thoughts, our feelings, and our deeds will be naturally compassionate, because there is no longer any conflict between my happiness and your happiness. You see, they are one and the same happiness. It's a shared happiness. So then there is cooperation instead of conflict. There is real compassion, which is the ability to feel the way the other feels, to put yourself in the other person's shoes or body or situation, to be open at least to that possibility, that the consciousness in this body, which is not a very good expression, or to which this body appears and to whom these words appear, and who speaks them, and the consciousness who hears them is the same. Just to be open to this possibility brings about a revolution, the real revolution. The only real revolution, because short of this revolution, it will always be business as usual.
So teach what you're teaching to everyone else, basically. That we're all one and just be good to each other, because I guess that's what I grapple with. Some people say just be happy and exude happiness, and then that'll help the consciousness, the collective consciousness, the global consciousness, wake up to this oneness.
Well, if you are not happy, how you have nothing to share, you see? So my tendency, if I go to a doctor, I like the doctor to look healthy.
So can we go back to science for a second? And I'd like to ask you
yes, go ahead.
a question. Do you believe that science will ever be able to facilitate our communication with, our connection to, our perception of ultimate reality?
No.
Thank you.
So my question, and I was the one who talked about time this morning.
I have something to add to that. Technology, yes. I'm using a mic, right? It facilitates some communication. But beyond that, no. So I stick to my gun. Yeah, go ahead.
So after talking this morning, I kept the inquiry going. I had to take a shower, and it kept happening. So the question that I asked you was, is time an instrument of perception? And the question evolved, is time a tool of perception? And then into, is time a veil of perception? And at that point, the question didn't matter to me anymore. And after that, I said, perception is its own veil of itself. And that's why I wonder if science won't ever get there.
Science deals with phenomena. There is no such a thing as non-phenomenal science, as far as I know. What we are talking about here, the reality that is hearing these words, is not a phenomenon. It never appeared, for instance. A phenomenon has a beginning and an end. But that which is hearing these words, do you remember when you began? You, consciousness? And if you don't remember, who else but you could? So, if you don't remember, that's the end of the matter. You see, there is no experience of the beginning of consciousness. And there is another good reason for that, that before consciousness began, there was no consciousness to experience its beginning, right? So the beginning of consciousness cannot be experienced, period. So those who claim that there is a beginning to consciousness, they may as well claim that there is a unicorn on some distant planet.
Thank you.
I would like to challenge your categorical, I'd like to challenge your categorical no to the previous questioner. I think that insofar as science brings with it and is based on and in turn reinforces a metaphysics, a philosophy which is materialist, reductionist, atheist, and so on and so forth, I think a new science which is emerging and which is in touch with spirit and which is not in contradiction to spirit, even if it itself does not lead to, let's say, it's not a form of spiritual practice, but it enables the obstacle which those beliefs form to any spiritual practice to be lifted. So I think it does have a role to play.
Well, but then we are talking about something else than science as we know it. I was very careful to mention that I was talking about phenomenal science. Current science is science of phenomena, right? As far as I know. And my answer was that, as far as I know, phenomenal science cannot teach us or tell us or anything about consciousness. And as I defined it, not about the content of consciousness, of course, that's a different issue, but about consciousness as that which is really experiencing these words in this moment. And I could kind of prove my point by saying that. How could it be possible to come up with even a thought experiment that could teach us anything about consciousness as that invisible presence which is hearing these words right now? How could we imagine even a thought experiment? For the very simple reason that this consciousness which is hearing these words has no shape, no form, no color of itself. Cannot be detected in some detector. Has no qualities. It is the transparent mirror in which all thoughts, perceptions, bodily sensations appear. We can learn a lot about the content of consciousness, and that's a very legitimate scientific line of investigation. And I have a scientific upbringing myself, and I am very respectful of science. I love science. I love physics and math. But for that very reason, I tend to keep these two a little separate. But I am certain that there are new discoveries in science. The science of mind. That's not my field of expertise or interest. But science will always discover new things, new horizons, new phenomena. That's beautiful. It's part of the human adventure. But my point here is happiness, different thing. One day I was giving, many years ago, a dialogue at UC Berkeley, and a gentleman, a physicist from UC Berkeley, he was actually the Dean of Physical Sciences at UC Berkeley, Geoffroy Chu, came to my dialogue, and he asked me, what's the connection between, he knew of my science, we knew each other, so he knew about my scientific background. So he asked the question, what's the connection between what you are saying and quantum mechanics? I say, really, none whatsoever. And then he came after the talk, and we had this conversation. I hadn't seen him in 5 years. And he said, I agree with everything you've said. Because in my answer, I said, what I've just said, I'm too respectful. I have too much respect for science. I know what a beautiful art form, in a sense, what a beautiful instrument it is. Not to kind of mix it up with anything else, in and by itself. However, what I find interesting is that the rules of the scientific method, acceptance of the facts, relying on experimentation, openness to new possibilities, reluctance to attachment to belief systems without verification, integrity. I find that very beautiful, and I find that the same methodology is very well suited to the spiritual investigation. Because there are pitfalls there also. We could be the victims also of our own wishful thinking. Yes?
Once upon a time, actually not too long ago, I had a little bit of experience that I looked at my social identity and...
You look at?
At my social identity. I was in a little different state of consciousness. And I looked at my social identity and all looked a little bit ridiculous and almost a little scary. And then when I woke up the next morning, and a little phony. But then when I woke up in the next morning, I was almost glad I was back in my regular identity. And I also, when I was 20 years ago, I read a book by Duncan called The Wayfarers about Meher Baba when he worked with the masks. And it always fascinated me. And these people got really far out, and they just didn't care about their surroundings anymore. And I was thinking, if that would happen here in America, they all end up in jail or on an insane asylum.
What's your question?
Well, how to deal with it? How do you deal with the fact that you have to maintain a dualistic kind of awareness and consciousness? Because if you don't care about, if you get in a different state, sometimes you can't take care of the everyday.
Your question is, how do you have to deal with the fact that you have to meditate? And my answer to this is, this question to be put to those who said that you have to meditate. I haven't said that. I never said you have to meditate.
No, I didn't mean meditate. I mean.
You know, I never said that you have to do anything. It is the beauty. We don't have to do anything. It's a free country.
I'm almost afraid if I would get in a no-dual state tomorrow, you know,
But you don't have to, you see?
I'm not.
You don't have to. You don't have to do anything.
Yeah, okay.
It may hit you, though, but...
Yeah, what if it hits me?
Wait and see. It may not be as bad as you anticipate it to be. Never know. Maybe a good thing. Don't worry. You'll be all right. You won't regret anything if it happens.
I think the most amazing discussion I ever heard was between Hamid Ali and Rupert Spira at the beginning of this conference. And
I wasn't there, so ask your question without reference.
yes. For Hamid, there is an experience called No, I have to be more accurate. There is an experience of partial cessation, islands of awareness, and also when he comes back from an experience of complete absence of awareness, he feels that his awareness has changed, and that the ultimate result of this is a recognition that existence and non-existence are not separate. Whereas for Rupert, and I would believe for you, it's just a logical impossibility, which is definitely true for me. I get that awareness could know anything about non-awareness. But if you consider that your awareness changes abruptly after something that you can't know, but you can't know it in itself, but like we know that, I can't go there. I can't go to clock time. And anyway, there are external excuses in the mind for believing that we are in deep sleep or we have an experience of cessation. And although they're not value in themselves, that's not a ground for saying that you had an experience of cessation. For Hamid, the quality of his, that doesn't even work for you. Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. There's no quality to awareness. That's right. So if he's talking about a change in
there is no phenomenal quality.
Yes,
I didn't
yes.
say that there is no quality.
Yes.
Because there is a quality of love, of
Yeah.
beauty,
Okay.
of humor, of presence,
Right.
of eternity,
Okay.
of immortality, of happiness.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's what, right. So Hamid claims changes in those aspects of awareness for him when this hypothetical experience that you can't experience of cessation happens. And I guess that's your answer to me about that. That can exist, but this is pointless to even postulate such a thing as
let's
cessation.
address, because it's a long question and it's a short time we have left. Let's address the question of the hypothetical experience of awareness. Tell me, do you know that you are aware through hearsay or through experience?
Through experience.
Through experience, right?
Right.
Are you sure?
Absolutely.
Now, is this experience phenomenal? Does it take time for you to know that you are aware?
No.
So you go to a place and instantaneously you get a certainty from there.
Yeah.
Is this certainty, are you 70%, 80%, 99%, or 100% that you are aware?
It is 100%. Yeah.
100%, right?
100%.
Now, are you 100% certain that we are here in a room near San Jose, California, and that we are not dreaming?
No.
Right. So in other words, what I was pointing at is an experience from your own recognition, from which you can derive a 100% certainty, right? Which has zero duration, and as such is not of the mind, but which is nevertheless an experience. So I was trying to address the adjective hypothetical.
Right. Right.
Now, of course, this experience through which we derive the certainty that there is awareness doesn't deliver all the goods, you see. But at least, I hope I have pointed to a new dimension, a different dimension, other than the objective dimension. And then my next assertion, but it's a hypothesis that requires verification, is that this experience ultimately will reveal itself as being unalloyed happiness and peace. That what we call happiness, even ordinary happiness, its nature, its elusive nature of happiness is precisely due to its non-phenomenal quality of these experiences. That happiness is nothing else that consciousness experiencing itself, like in a moment of understanding, in a moment of love, in a moment of beauty, in a moment of sharing, in a moment of humor, etc. You see, we have a short time here. We are past the time.
Thank you.
And I have to let go of all of you without letting go of all of you.